God says in the Bible that police deserve four things: power, fear, honor, and pay. Why? Because police are his ministers. The Bible says in Romans 13, "Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation." For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. This has never been a popular part of the Bible, because corruption among rulers has always been rampant. But God did make himself clear. First, notice that God here endorses the use of force. He calls it power, and immediately recognizes the inclination we have to resist power. Nobody likes to be forced to obey. But God isn't negotiating. The structure of government is ordained by God. God expects us to submit to rulers. Notice also that God endorses the wholesome value of fear. He says rulers are a terror to evil works. It is true that sometimes rulers, kings, dictators, communist parties, and theocracies terrorize good people. God does not endorse that, of course. And resistance to the personalities in power in such cases may be necessary and virtuous. Somebody should have resisted Hitler. But resistance against government itself is not legitimate. And when government is accountable to society, such as a democratic government with duly elected rulers, it is authorized to impose its rules by making people afraid of disobedience. In other words, God endorses armed police. They do not bear the sword in vain, he says. He tells all of us to be afraid of them, but especially those who do evil. Police are given deadly power to be able to execute wrath on those that do evil. This is what the Bible says. No apology. If they are not feared, they cannot be effective. This has an inevitable and unfortunate consequence. People who have power have a tendency to abuse it. We find corruption among all powerful and influential people: politicians, doctors, lawyers, news reporters, and even clergy. And police are no exception, of course. When police manage to dodge accountability, they do serious damage to society. When such corruption is discovered and proven, the offenders should be punished severely because they were given power, and with that power comes greater responsibility. But when police exercise their power against evil, that is not abuse, and they should not be blamed, accused, or harassed when doing their job. And their power should not be undermined by spineless politicians and dishonest yellow journalists. God himself endorses their power. He calls them revengers executing wrath upon evildoers. Third, notice that God commands us to honor police. According to God, police should be addressed with respect and reverence. People should listen when they speak and obey when they command. If you don't honor the police, you deserve the wrath of God, the wrath of society, and the wrath of law enforcement officers. This is right. Those who dishonor police deserve damnation. God says so. All of us should honor police. We should march in protest against protesters who dishonor police, because God tells us to honor them. Lastly, notice that God tells us police deserve to be paid. They deserve to be paid well. Why? Because they are God's ministers, attending continually upon God's work. One cause of police corruption in many societies is the fact that they are not paid appropriately, considering their intrinsic value to society. In those situations, only people of low character want to be police in order to use the power for dishonest gain. But when police are paid well, people of good character compete to become police because of the honor and the power to do good, and they are disinclined to jeopardize their prized position by corruption. Low characters become mostly eliminated from the force by sheer competition. Those that remain get caught eventually by their fellow officers or by bystanders with smartphones. God told us police deserve to be paid well, and this is one of the keys to effective policing. Now, if you have ever been abused by people in power, you might not like any of this. But God is right, no matter your personal experience. God promises to make all things right someday. The Bible says he will be coming to reign as king over all the earth. He won't be establishing a democracy. He will impose righteousness by the right hand of his power. In that day, all the oppressors will get what is coming to them. God will defend the powerless and establish righteous government in all the world. Nobody has gotten away with anything. Sinners will be judged. But God invites you to make peace with him now. Jesus Christ, described in the Bible as God in the flesh, sacrificed himself to reconcile you to God. He rose again from the dead and now offers you forgiveness of sins, a permanent relationship with God, and a special place in his coming kingdom. He just requires submission now to him and to his word. Talk to him. Make your peace with him while you still can. It may not be easy for you, but it is worth it.